Welcome to this episode of Trojan Poetry. This week we're reading a poem by Joshua Clover that I picked, and John has not seen this one yet. So here we go, off to the races. This is called An Archive of Confessions, a Genealogy of Confessions. Now the summer air exerts its syrupy drag on the half-dark city under the strict surveillance of quotation marks. The citizens with their cockades and free will drift off from the magnet of work to the terrible magnet of love. In the far suburbs, crenellated of Cartesian yards and gin, the tribe of mothers calls the tribe of children in. Across the bluing evening, it's the hour things get to be excellently pointless, like describing the alphabet. Yikes. It's fine to be here with you, watching the great events without taking part, clinking our ice as they advance yet remain distant. Like the baker, always about to understand, idly sweeping up that he is the recurrence of Napoleon in a baker's life, always interrupted by the familiar notes of a childish song. No more sleepy dreaming. We float casually on the surface of the day, staring at the bottom, jotting in our daybooks how beautiful the armies of autumn. All right, John's nodding.
Yeah.
He's quiet. We may have stumped him this time.
Yeah, every time.
Part of our ongoing attempt to stump each other with our reactions. That was a good one, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I feel like I began to make sense of it somewhere in the middle. It's fine to be here with you watching the great events without taking part, clinking our ice as they advance yet remain distant. The idea of not taking part in big events, right, and just kind of relaxing and taking it easy, but there's always the undercurrent of those big events, like the guy who thinks he's Napoleon, right?
And the whole thing about the baker at the end kind of threw me. I have some other ideas, but I was wondering, we can come back to that maybe.
It seems like a retreat, right? A retreat from the world. The suburbs are retreated from the city. Things are pointless, and that's okay, except for he says "yikes," which is interesting. Yeah,
right.
It's fine to be here with you. Yeah, but then he calls it a confession, an archive of confessions. Like, is the confession that he maybe realizes he should be doing more, but he's not, and he is confessing that this is nice, right? He's got a nice life.
But he's not participating. He's...
Right. It's very casual.
He's observing, almost judging, but he's strictly removed from all of this, right?
But even then, he's like interrupted by the song, No More Sleepy Dreaming, right? Like there's these undertones of the army at the end.
The tribes, the armies of autumn. You kind of mentioned this a second ago, but this poem, for some reason, it just was really relaxing to me. I don't know why. I mean, that's the mood, that's the feeling I get as I read it. I think maybe right from the beginning, with the summer air exerts its syrupy drag, and we just got through having, some really hot days here in Chicago, and the humidity just gets, intense. And that's summer to me. Like I can feel that. The line that really jumped out to me is the fourth line. Well, really the third line. The citizens drift off from the magnet of work to the terrible magnet of love. And I thought that was the beginning of his kind of judgment and removal, that you come home to the suburbs, you ride the train home from the city, but it's a terrible thing, right? The terrible magnet of love is drawing you back to your family, which maybe to this guy is boring. I don't know if he's bored by the suburbs. And then he has, he talks about the far suburbs crenellated of Cartesian yards. And we were just talking about this before we rolled camera, about Cartesian is mathematical, it's mechanical, it's the opposite of warm, and because you drive in certain subdivisions, it's like cookie cutter, right? So it seems like this sarcastic guy sitting back in his chair, clinking his ice, like, oh, look at these suburban moms with their kids, they all run in a pack, like he's trying to feel more of an individual away from the tribes.
But I'm not sure he is, because, it's the hour things get to be excellently pointless. it's fine to be here with you, right? Like, I think I don't know if he's or if he is
Well, it's fine
sarcastic,
to be
he's
here with
judging
you.
himself.
He likes the person he's with, but he doesn't necessarily, he's not involved in everything that he's watching, which maybe is the confession, like you said. Maybe he
Right, but he is
knows
involved because he's
supposed to be
there. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
well, but I mean, he's
duplicitous,
observing
not
this.
duplicitous.
Well, he's duplicitous.
No, what is
could
it?
be, I don't know.
He is part of the fabric of the suburbs, but if he is trying to mock or be sarcastic about them, he maybe is confessing that he realizes that when he's part of that, he can't.
Yeah, I mean, I think he knows that he's part of the scene, that he's also kind of observing and making a judgment about, right? I'm still confused by the baker, right? Like the baker, always about to understand, idly sweeping up that he is the recurrence of Napoleon in a baker's life. That just comes out of left field, I mean, baking obviously is something, things are rising, you're working with your hands, creating something.
Yeah, I think maybe that's the idea of like every man's house is his castle. Like, he's the little emperor of his bakery and he controls that. Little being like, the old idea that Napoleon was a little man or whatever.
Syndrome.
Yeah. And he gets it, but maybe he doesn't quite get it.
The other line that drew me at the second to last line, it starts with, we float casually on the surface of the day, which again, I feel is just really relaxing. I almost feel like, there's some Bob Marley playing in the background or some, just relaxation. But then they're staring at the bottom, jotting in our daybooks how beautiful the armies of autumn. I took that as being very, I don't know, just, maybe sarcastic, but, staring at the bottom. Why is this the bottom?
Well, at the bottom of the pool, right? Like, he's floating.
He's floating. We stare at the bottom. Yeah, I guess.
But I
took that as like the bottom of human nature, the bottom of existence. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading that line wrong because I link that back to the terrible magnet of love. It's like you're working in the city and it's important and it's business, but then you get drawn back by this terrible magnet out to the suburbs, to your life at home, and I just don't understand why that's terrible when the rest of the poem seems so relaxed and kind of observational. So I think that's a really interesting juxtaposition, if you will.
Well, like the word awful or awesome, awful comes from awe, which is awe-inspiring. Like, is terrible the same way where it kind of has that double meaning of being overwhelmed, right? It's terror. I'd have to do some looking at the word terrible, like what's the etymology of that might suggest it's just overwhelming,
right?
Because I'm not sure. I mean, you said work is important and work is whatever, but I'm not sure this guy thinks anything's important except for hanging out and kind of
having a drink,
But then I think there is the undercurrent of blame or confession or realization that it's relaxing, but it's not going to stay that way.
It's not fulfilling necessarily or lasting. Yeah, I feel like, when he says, yet we remain distant, and he says things like, yikes, I get this judgy sense that he's part of the suburbs, but maybe his confession is that he feels like he's above them or something like that, or he doesn't belong there, he doesn't like it.
Right. But he's happy to be part of it.
Right, but he's happy to be there.
Yeah.
So he's torn, I think, So it's interesting because as someone who lives in the suburbs myself, I really like his descriptions and that sense of summer and relaxation, but then there's just those couple dark twists in there that I was wondering, like, where is this guy coming from, and why does he feel like an outsider? Why is he other? Why isn't he joining in to this scene that he sees in front of him?
All right. Well, thanks for watching. Please join the conversation in the comments on YouTube or on Twitter at Trojan Poetry DGN. Also, check out our website at trojanpoetrydgn.blogspot.com.